Heather, do you want to kick us off with a quick introduction and then we'll get into Max, and then I'll start asking our questions?
Sounds really good. Hi, I'm Heather. I live in San Jose, so I'm in the Bay Area. I'm gonna own it, Lexi. I haven't been good at like the bragging, so I always give the humble version. So I'm gonna do my best to not do the humble version. Lexi and I actually met because I was like, hey, I love supporting women in tech. I love what you guys are doing. And while I work in IT, I actually do get a chance to hire DevOps, SRE, and some overlap with software engineering. And I've also run some ERG groups, so I'd love to help. And so she was like, we'd love it. So that's how we ended up, Lexi. My background's in IT, so a little less traditional for this group. I went to school for IT. I originally was going to go for computer science, and then they said you have to take Calc 3, and I was like, math is okay, but I hate it. And they said, but if you do IT, you only have to do pre-calc. And I said, bet. So I switched over and did IT simply for the math requirements, but it worked out for me. My parents were a bit disappointed because we all know developers make more money than IT people, so that's okay. I did help desk, I did sysadmin, and then my big break, I got hired by Google as an engineer there, kind of doing sysadmin work and maintenance work. And I worked my way up to a lead engineer role, maintaining all the physical security systems. So if you badged in at any office at Google, even as a visitor, that was the system I owned and maintained and woke me up many nights at 3 a.m. for an outage. So I learned a lot in 6 years. In that role, I kind of started working more in the industry and participating in a lot of women in tech groups and did a lot of volunteering internally at Google. And in part of those connections, I met some folks at Facebook, and they were looking for a leader to come in and help run the teams that I was an engineer on at Google. So I took a leadership role over there. In 2 years, I went from one team to 6 teams. And by the time I left, I had over 45 reports. So it was a lot of growth in a very short amount of time. A lot of time we get sink or swim, and I did a little sink or swim, but I loved it and enjoyed it. Um, but I had never worked with women in IT at that point. At Google for 6 years, we had tripled the size of the team, and I was still the only woman. Thankfully, when I left, one of my interns was hired, and so at least there was one other woman when I left. And when I was at Meta, there wasn't a single person on my team that I didn't hire that was a woman. So I was surrounded by and had worked with almost exclusively men in tech. And I thought I can do this better. And it's not just women in tech. I really feel passionate about all types of diversity. So I decided to go find a startup that I felt very passionate about and develop and build my own IT team and see what that was like. I also knew it was going to be a challenge to start from scratch and build instead of like big tech where I had everything already built for me. And I found Huntress, and I've been here for about 2 years, and I've tripled the size of our IT department. It was two guys when I got here, and now is a diverse group of gender, racial diversity, religious diversity, sexuality diversity. And I'm very proud of the very diverse team we have now. One of the most diverse teams I've ever worked on. So we have a great, well-functioning IT department, but I was ready for a new challenge. And I am actually moving to Lyft, which I had to tell Lexi about right before this. So tomorrow's my last day at Huntress, and I'm moving over to Lyft at a director role there to run IT operations at Lyft. So that's in a week. So that is my non-humble introduction of my
That
background.
was awesome. Thank you so much and congrats on your new role. We're like, I'm sure all cheering for you. We need to post you in our wins channel then. We need to go do that after this,
Sure.
which is Max, you don't know this, but we have a channel where whenever somebody stops job searching and they get a new job, we push it into a wins channel, and then everybody gives them emojis, and then if they want, they can give tips to the network, but it's kind of like an Oscar speech where they can be like, thank you to everybody who helped me so far. It's like somebody told me today that she was visualizing her name in there for months, and then it came in today. So it was like, it's like little things, but we have to celebrate everybody's wins whenever we can. So thanks so much for the intro, Heather. Max, you're up.
Yeah.
Non-humble. Non-humble.
Congrats again, Heather. I'm sure it's going to be an exciting new role there at Lyft. I know a few people that work or used to work there and they've enjoyed their time, so I'm sure you will as well. So for me, I live in San Francisco. I'm originally from France, but I've moved to the US a long time ago. I'm now a citizen. I did my studies in France. I have a double master's in CS and software systems design. Originally, I focused on embedded systems, but I've kind of moved up the stack fairly quickly in my career. Was focusing on backend distributed systems and especially large scale global infrastructures, working on kind of high performance, low latency systems. I did a couple of years at an ad tech company called Turn that was handling a large volume of traffic. It's kind of the first place where I handled kind of multiple millions of queries per second type of traffic. which creates some interesting kind of system design, architecture, patterns and challenges. And then I got my green card, which allowed me to like seek a new job and take a bit more risk in my career. And that's when I joined SignalFX. I was one of the first few engineers at this startup that had a good pedigrees in the existing team. People from Facebook, Google, Ben Horowitz was on the boards. It was great place. And over there, we built a low latency real-time streaming engine for time series data analytics. So there's a lot in there, but basically it's doing math on time series data at scale in real time. And we applied that to building an observability and monitoring system. So if you know of Datadog or Grafana, SignalFX was one of the competitors in that space. And I was pretty heavily involved in the design and implementation of that core piece of technology, but also more generally of our entire cloud platform. We were very early in containerizing all of our stack and workloads. This was back in 2013, and using Docker in production. I have kind of a cheat code. My cousin Jerome was an early engineer at .cloud and Docker, so I can add it in on the technology. But worked a lot on our cloud platform and was involved in kind of all levels of the stack, from our global cloud infrastructure on both AWS and GCP, all of the platform level components and backend systems, the analytics system, of course, which was one of my specialties for a while, and I was the tech lead for that team for a while, to kind of handling really large scale clusters of third-party services like Elasticsearch, Kafka, Cassandra, which are kind of notoriously difficult to run at scale. So kind of made my teeth into that kind of domain. While I was at SignalFX, I created the company's second product around distributed tracing and APM. Basically took a hackathon project and turned that into a product that by the time I left the company was a 40 million ARR product line, and a team of about 35 people that was reporting to me. In that period is when SignalFX was acquired by Splunk. That was in 2019. We had a fantastic exit, just over $1 billion, so unicorn exit officially. And I stayed on that Splunk for 4 years after that, with some very nice retention, and continued to grow my team. Some really interesting challenges at the people level, the technology level, learning how to work in a more corporate but also public company environment, which was very interesting. But then 2023 marked about 10 years since I joined SignalFX, and I had kind of done what I wanted to do at Splunk. So it was time for me to go back to an early stage again. So that's where I found Whereabouts, where I am now. We're building a cloud platform for data and analytics and AI on geospatial data. So the company was founded by the co-creators of Apache Sedona, which is an open source project built over above Spark, and that specializes in doing spatial data analytics, both what we call vector data and raster data, so a lot of like satellite imagery processing or vehicle telematics. There's applications across many different industries. It's a really cool domain to be in. And the role that I have here is the head of engineering. That was kind of the next logical step that I was looking for in my career, is taking everything that I had learned as an engineer early at a startup, as an engineering leader in kind of 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 phases of the life of a company, and apply that right from the beginning in that role of head of engineering and kind of shaping the engineering organization and much more, because engineering is a major part of the company still at this stage, right from the start. And so it's been a good fun so far. So that kind of runs it up. So Lexi, I guess I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you so much. I love, Jem, we have to remember this for the future, to always say the non-humble intro, because it's so good. That was a really good intro. Thank you. Both of you. It was really fantastic, and it's like so clear why we're so lucky to have you. So okay, I want to get into some of my questions, and then hopefully anybody who thinks of any question at any time, feel free to throw it in the chat. We will get to it, even if you throw it now and we get to it in 15 minutes. We will try to get to as many as we can. So, anything that like you're thinking, let's get it down. I do have a few questions though. So Okay, so for both of you, I think I mentioned this before. I'm always trying to find some sort of interesting overlap between our panelists, and I really like doing two rather than three because I think like, a lot of us all have interesting intersections in our career. And I don't want people with too similar backgrounds. That's not really the goal, but I thought that both of you have really interesting, different perspective when it comes to SaaS and just these tools that really become part of what we do every day, right? And so I thought that we could each I would love basically to hear each of your perspectives. And I know it's a little bit vague, but I gave you some context beforehand. Just technology trends that you're feeling excited about and feeling more skeptical about. As I mentioned, we can get into SaaS, dev tools, AI, security. I think those are some interesting areas of overlap between the two of you. But I think that like there's a lot of talk in our Slack right now. There are AI mega enthusiasts. There are folks who are worried about the planet. Like, we're all over the place on AI, and I think probably fundamentally optimistic, but also it's a concerning time when it comes to some of these like narratives in the news around, software engineering not existing or like, so I think it's a great place to start is just if you can each share some of your thoughts on technology trend, like, just one or anything that comes to mind that you're really excited about and optimistic about, and things that you're a little bit like, oh, maybe this is a fad or a trend.
Max, you want to go first this time?
Sure. And I'm actually going to start with something that's not about AI because I know we'll get to that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, great.
But
Love it.
there's two others, and it's maybe over a slightly longer time frame. But so the first one is in engineering in general, I always see complexity of systems as a liability to the organization. And so it's really, really important to look at how can we design simpler systems that can do more. And I actually think that's becoming easier and easier over time. So kind of the primitives that we're working with as software engineers or infrastructure engineers or DevOps, especially in cloud native systems, are becoming more and more powerful. And that makes building robust and scalable systems above those primitives a lot easier while keeping them simple. And I think that's really, really important and really, really useful. It translates into a whole bunch of downstream things like the operational burden of the systems, like not getting woken up at 3 in the morning, and making them easier to iterate on, easier to onboard on, etc. I think a good example of that is just cloud storage, for example, like S3. Over the last several years, has seen some really interesting improvements that have allowed for higher level things to be achieved with S3 directly above it. And that's true in S3's always had legendary data resiliency, but there's been some really interesting improvements on the performance of S3, especially with things like directory buckets, or new capabilities like conditional writes, or even now with S3 tables, which is actually just Iceberg on S3. It's made it possible to completely redesign or rethink how certain systems are built on top of cloud storage, especially in domains like streaming or data lake houses, things like this. Think of like WarpStream or even tiered storage for Red Panda and Kafka, things like this. And you have such more powerful primitives in S3 that you don't need to design complex systems above it. So that's one interesting trend. And cloud storage is only just one example. There's plenty of others. And maybe like service mesh is another good example of like giving a lot of capabilities out of the box from this for building like service-oriented architectures, a lot simpler. And another interesting trend, of course, is like distributed computing in general is becoming a lot more commoditized. I mean, it's maybe like obvious for a lot of people. It really depends on what type of applications you're working on. But that promise of the cloud of on-demand elasticity and flexibility, that's becoming available to more and more people, more and more use cases, with a lot more of the heavy lifting of managing infrastructure or even dealing with things like Kubernetes that's kind of fading away. And think of like high-level platforms like Modal or Fly or even Vercel, or even Cloudflare. It it really changes the level of complexity that we have to deal with to build applications and services on the cloud that kind of have built-in reliability, resiliency, scalability, relatively good cost factors, I would say. But then on a much more like hardcore aspect of like data, heavy data science or data analytics, or doing AI model training at scale, a lot of those primitives of leveraging massive amount of computes are becoming almost turnkey in a lot of those systems and tools, with without having to fiddle with much. So I think those are cool trends that have made a lot of things possible over the last like 5 years.
Love it. Do you want to get into your overhyped?
My AI take,
We do
yeah,
first. Let's go, Heather. Think a trend you're excited about. Let's start
yeah,
positive, like this.
yeah. Well, there's things of AI I'm positive about. It's
So
more balanced.
of course, as
But yeah,
it
Heather,
crazy
I'm
not to
gonna
be.
hear what
Yeah,
you
I
completely.
love that we're
Yeah.
like AI is the elephant in the room. We'll touch it when we have to. Um, yeah. So I think I have a unique perspective, especially on the development side, because I said it kind of on the opposite side of what you do, Max, in the sense that I'm usually the ones buying the products. My team actually selects and vets Datadog and a lot of the other tooling that we bring into the company. So the engineering team works with our team, and we kind of get to decide what SaaS products get bought, which is funny working for a company that builds a SaaS product while also being, the SaaS management vendor. But from my perspective, the thing that I've noticed the most with SaaS is when I was back in my day, when SaaS wasn't a thing, from an IT perspective, we issued licenses, we installed a thick client, and that was the only way you got access to tools. So there was a heavily, there was a heavy amount of red tape and bureaucracy related to what you got access to. SaaS tooling democratized that. And that is both an amazing thing. Like you touched on, Max, we can move a lot more with agility. We can get people access to systems much quicker. It's also cheaper. Licensing has become much, much cheaper because it's easier to, afford things in the cloud, right? So SaaS just makes it cheaper on whole. So individual user licenses are cheaper. So there's tons of great things about SaaS tooling as our now default. The downside to it that we do struggle with, and is something that I think is impacting how we do engineering today, is everybody can get access to any free trial they want. And I cannot tell you as an IT administrator how hard that is, right? Every time that, an engineer wants a new type of coding tool, that they can just go sign up for a free trial and connect it to their accounts and start getting to work. So there's a huge burden in that. And what a lot of SaaS vendors are starting to recognize is security then becomes the biggest hole or the biggest piece. I don't care if someone does a free trial. I care if they're using user data or they're connecting it and they're following proper security protocols. And so for our own company on the software development side, and it affects my purchasing decision, is security by design is the buzzword, but security by design really meant after you wrote your code, then go through a security review and see if you did it well. Sometimes you had, a technical design doc review process before you started, but it wasn't as common as it was, at every company. Some, like Google, obviously has it very well orchestrated, but especially in scrappy startups, sometimes security was a secondary thought, necessarily the first thought. It's becoming shifting left more and more. And so people are starting to understand that if you don't have security built in from the day one, you can't sell your product in this market. And now, as like someone who vets products myself, the first questions I start asking is, how is permission segmentation done? How are you actually securing your APIs? Like, we dig into all those details before I'll even look at the usability and the feature sets. And before, right, it was more of like, if you met our needs and you've had all these fancy features, we'll make the security piece work. Now we can't even talk to you if you don't meet security requirements. So SaaS has a ton of ability to make us more agile, to open up so many doors, and it really does make things more financially affordable for smaller companies and not just the big guys. But it has to be balanced against security risks, especially in today's environment. I work for a cybersecurity company, so I'm unfortunately well-versed in how unsecure the internet is and how often you can get taken advantage of. So I think it's falling more and more on software developers to be cybersecurity experts themselves, because they have to think about it from that perspective well before a security engineer even takes a look at it. So it's kind of a trend I've noticed. I'm excited for it because I think it's going to make us all better by default, because now security is something we take very seriously versus an afterthought. So I'm excited about it. It's not a bad thing. It's just a cautionary approach. And then the other thing that I'm noticing a lot of, and this is for more DevOps side of things, infrastructure as code was relatively new around the time I was at Google. And they were forcing on everybody to learn. So it wasn't just our developers who were using infrastructure as code. All of us had to learn it. And I think infrastructure as code is a really great example on how it starts in a highly skilled, group of folks have access to these coding tools that really can make everything easier. But as the usability of these things expands, less skilled workers can take advantage of it, or people who aren't, writing code on a daily basis, but understand enough. It's essentially, the drag and drop version of coding. It's democratizing that across the company so that even small businesses who don't have access to highly skilled coders can leverage these toolings. And I think that's super important. So I've noticed that a lot of companies are trying to create products that better serve even non-skilled workers sometimes. And I love that trend. And I'm watching it get utilized. And I work at a very small company that is now utilizing fully infrastructure as code. And that's amazing because especially in cloud environments, it significantly decreases our costs and allows us to sell our product for even less.
This is awesome.
Yeah,
Respond in the chat. Yeah. Just tell
I
us how
wanted
it's
to.
going. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to kind of add on to what Heather was saying about the security aspects and in building products. One of the things that's like bringing those requirements much earlier on now for companies is certain compliance frameworks that SOC 2 that
Yep.
are I guess, contagious, I would say. It's like for you to be SOC 2 compliant, you need like your vendors to be SOC 2 compliant or to like fill in some annoying questionnaires. And so it's a lot easier if everyone is SOC 2 compliant. And it means that you have to become SOC 2 compliant like much earlier than you maybe used to do in the past as a product company or as a startup. And so as engineers, having knowledge of like what that means for how you build the product, how you build your infrastructure, but also how you build your software development lifecycle workflows, or how you deal with internal IT and security so that you are compliant. Even if you're not yet going through your audit, you can start to build things in a certain way that's going to make your life so much easier later on when the time actually comes. And that's a really valuable kind of set of knowledge to possess as an engineer, because you can start to bring some of those best practices to the company that you join, that you're at, and they'll recognize that when the time comes and like, oh yeah, look at all the work that we don't have to do because our engineers are smart, right? And they've actually thought about this stuff a little bit earlier.
I have to echo that, Max, because literally, like we've been on calls before where the sales rep was like, let me get one of the developers on here to answer your questions because it was, very detailed feature set questions. And there was one company where the sales developer or the developer joined the sales engineer and absolutely knew what SOC 2 Type 2 was, could answer our questions on what they had already done, what they hadn't done, and what their roadmap was to get to full compliance. So while one of our requirements was they needed to be Type 2 compliant, they weren't yet, but they knew what they needed to do to get there. They already had on the roadmap and they could articulate that. And I could see that sales engineer was like, thank God for this developer because they knew exactly how to answer those questions. And from us as a viewer standpoint, I was like, okay, cool. They know what they're doing, right? This wasn't like some engineering manager or some director who came in and gave me a corp speak. This was a developer who's building the code who actually understood why we need these things and why they're important. And they built so much trust as a customer myself that this was being done right. And so we actually ended up signing a contract with them for like $500,000, despite not being Type 2 compliant, just because I felt comfortable after talking with a developer that clearly the company was doing the right thing to get there.
Super interesting. I am like not even, I want to give folks a chance if you have any other follow-up questions about any of this, right? SaaS, security, some of the technological trends that Max was getting into. I want to take a beat, and if anybody has questions to throw them in the chat. We have a couple other questions that I want to get to, which are, advice and hot takes, but I know we just got a lot down, so I wanted to see if anybody had some stuff. Okay, what do we have? Oh, cool. Yeah, we're gonna get into some. Yeah, that's a good question. Elmira, I want to come back to this question just maybe a little bit. It's a great one. I just want to see if we have anything just in related to what those two just talked about. But let's hold on that one. Let's give folks like another 45 seconds, and then I'll jump into my other questions. But do throw stuff in the chat. We'll just get to it when we get to it. But I just know that there were a lot of great tips there, and I just wanted to. I'll stop yapping so people can catch their breath. Okay, well, you all can think on this. I also have my notes I'll post. Just I note took both of you talking so that we have a lot of takeaways. There's just a lot of really like good technical advice, and I want to make sure that we get a chance to digest that and have some good takeaways. Okay, let's switch gears. What is a piece of advice you'd each give this group to help them succeed in interviews or advance their engineering careers? And let's make it like when I say this, people sometimes are like, I don't know what you mean exactly, but unintuitive, unobvious, right? So if you're like, maybe this is obvious, that's still okay. Just not like incredibly cliche. That's what I would ask.
Sure, I can jump in this time. It's not cliche, but it should be intuitive, but it's not. And it's also one that I've struggled with. So it's why I think I'm going to answer the question this way. But if it seems too intuitive, let me know, Lexi. I'll pivot. One of the things that I've struggled with the most in my career is I used to have a sign on my desk that said, "Work hard, be kind, stay humble." And I loved that because it was really a part of my core values. And when I got to Google, that be humble was definitely something I clung to because a lot of people were like, "Oh, you work at Google now, like you've made it." And I didn't feel like I made it. I felt like I was waiting to get fired every day because imposter syndrome is real. And so I really didn't need a reminder to stay humble. I stayed humble all by myself. But what I really learned over those 6 years and since then is that um, I was preconditioned to be humble, and I was preconditioned to not see self-promotion as something necessary but nice to have. And I do think that is a gendered thing. I'll just own it. And so some advice I got that really changed my career, and I now repeat it, and it's unintuitive, but it is also intuitive, is own your ambition. And what I mean by that is it's really okay to say like, hey, I think I want to do this, or I'm really good at this, like self-promotion, like Lexi talked about. But owning your ambition is a totally different thing, which is tell people where you want to go, tell people what you want to do. And I say this knowing that it is gendered and two, that does have a cost associated with it. And so being vulnerable for a minute, I interviewed with a role very recently as I was looking for a new role. And I was interviewing with a CIO, and that person asked me outright, like we had a really great interview. It was going well. I was on final. Basically, they said, we're going to make you an offer, but they just want to, vet with you on a few like details of the role. So I basically had a verbal offer already on the table. We'd even talk salary. So this is a done deal. And this interview is going great. Everything's going well. And this person who was a CIO looked at me and said, where do you want to be in 5 years? And without pausing or hesitating, for the first time in my career, I said, I want to be a CIO. That's what I'm going to do. Like I just said it like it was a fact because that's how I feel about it. Whether I get there in 5 years or not is fine, but that's my goalpost. That's what I'm aiming for. And their entire face changed. Their entire posture changed. And at first I was like, why did they seem bothered by my response? My assumption is at this point, having reflected on it, is that they felt threatened by that because they felt like maybe I was saying I'm coming for their job. Clearly, that was not my intent, but I think that's how they took it. Either way, in me owning my ambition, the person didn't like that. And after the interview, they pulled the verbal offer and said that I wasn't the right personality fit. So there's real impacts to sometimes when we own our ambition. So I'm giving this advice saying sometimes we will pay a price for it. But what I have also learned in my career is that's not a place I want to work anyways. So thank you for exiting from my life because you just saved me a lot of pain and struggle. And even though it's devastating to have a verbal offer pulled, I also know you took the trash out. Thank you for taking yourself out. If that makes sense. Not to be mean, but truthfully. So own your ambition. And I give this advice a lot for some of my directs, but we can't tell what you want to do unless you tell us. Tell your boss you want to be a lead engineer. Tell them you want to be an architect of a system. Show up at the door when you can. But often I do the work and then expect people to offer me opportunities because I'm like, I work hard and I'm clearly the best engineer. So why aren't I getting it? Speak your ambition to the wind. Tell anybody who will talk to you and hear it. Tell your peers. Tell people in other departments. You have no idea how much people know each other and network and connect and can help you. And they won't know what you're trying to do and how they can help you if they don't know where you want to go. All of you have so many opportunities in your careers. Tell people where you want to go so they know what they can do to help you. And the right people will offer you. And to piggyback on that, ask for help. So many of us, me included, have gotten where we are because someone else lifted us a hand. In my case, it's actually all been men who have opened the doors and helped me up. And I'm so grateful for that. But I want to turn around and lift up as many women as I can along with me. And so I can't tell you how many people reach out to me on LinkedIn are like, hey, I looked at your profile and I really love your career path and I'd love some advice if you're willing. And it's completely out of the blue. And I'm just so impressed with the gumption of some people to say, can you help me? Are you willing to? I'm a completely random stranger. And every time I can, I make time for them because it's important to me that I got opportunities because people open the door for me. And I want to do that for others. So I know it's kind of cheesy advice, Lexi, but I think we need to hear it over and over again.
I don't
So
think
much
it's cheesy
trouble.
at all. I don't think it was at all. Wait, give Heather some emoji reactions to how we felt about this advice, please. This is something I do. I don't like talking into the void, so I asked. Okay, yeah, agreed. Agreed. Me too. I loved that. I mean, and I think that thank you to Heather for being vulnerable and like sharing when it didn't work. And that's actually exactly what I mean when I say like cliche, like when advice has limitations. And I think there's all sorts of advice in tech that just our network hears and they want to try it and it doesn't work, right? Like apply for jobs that you're not fully qualified on paper because women only apply when they're 100% qualified and men, get it when they're less. And then you go and then you get rejected for not being 100% qualified. So it's like, what do I do with that advice? Am I doing something wrong? So
Yeah.
I think that, I think there's a gender component, but also all this advice has a lot of nuance and layers, and it's hard to know when it applies to you or not. So thanks for sharing your own experience. That's usually, I think, the best way to kind of learn it. And also thanks for making yourself open to others. Like, so LinkedIn, then you like if somebody connects with you on LinkedIn or Slack, or do you have a preference? Just so, yeah,
And I
just
get emails. It's always weird because I'm always like, where'd you get my email from? I know it sounds terrible, but like I'm always skeptical, but I pay attention to LinkedIn and I feel like LinkedIn's a great tool when used the right way. And the great part about it is when someone does reach out, I'll absolutely go check your profile. And what I'm looking for is, I see you're volunteering? Have you participated in programs? Because if you're doing the work yourself to help others or be involved in your community, then I doubly want to invest in you. So you bump to the top of my line. I'm like, cool, you're doing what you can to help others and to use your own time and energy. And that means I want to invest in you because I know it's going to have even more impact because you are a force multiplier. So I absolutely will stalk people on LinkedIn when they reach out to me.
Super cool. Love that clarification too. I'll just add one quick thing to that is like you get as a person in a leadership role, you get these asks from people who want advice and then they literally give you nothing in terms of they don't tell you who they are, they don't tell you anything about, they don't look you up. So I love what you're saying, Heather, and I think for probably, I'm guessing for both of you, you're trying to give back to this community by being here. It's not just it's actually really hard to give advice to somebody who like doesn't, as you said, like if they don't do the work to like try to ask the right questions, it can be very hard. But when you really like, I don't know, I remember I did a panel a few months ago and then someone was like, what should I tell high school students to do in the future to have a job? And I was like, that's a really hard question. Like, how can I help all these different people with all these different things for the entire future that I don't know? So the opposite is true. When you reach out to somebody for advice, like being specific is really helpful sometimes.
It is. I literally, the advice I give is say where you are, what you're doing, tell me what you're trying to do or what your passions are. Start with something. And that gives me a place to jump in. So just introduce yourself and say who you are and what you're trying to do. Like that opens the door 100%.
100%. Love that. Okay, Max. And we were doing unintuitive advice, software engineering, job search, career today.
I don't know if mine is unintuitive, but so there's a bit two part to my answer. Because if you look at what's involved in advancing your career or innovating well, there's going to be yourself and there's going to be the people around you. And one thing that I learned from a past mentor is you should try to surround yourself with three specific people. You need a mentor, you need your manager, and you need a champion. And ideally, they're not the same person. And you need to know how to manage your relationship with each of them adequately. Your manager, of course, is a person that's going to give you feedback, and that's going to be, I would say, more mechanically helping you advance in your career, especially if you're in a corporate environment. Your mentor is someone that ideally is not your manager and is a bit kind of on the side of exactly what you're working on, but at least knows about your domain, your industry of your work, and that you can go to for advice. What I found the most useful actually in talking to a mentor is it forces your brain to abstract the specifics of the problem that you're working on. And by just going through this exercise, your brain almost finds half of the answer already. And then you get some advice and you have to translate it back to, okay, how do I apply this to my situation? And that's also a very valuable muscle to train. And then the third one is having a champion, right? Ideally, right? Someone that's in your organization that is going to be an ally to you, that's going to amplify your wins, that's going to provide testimonials when your manager is here building your promotion packet or things like this, right? So trying to cultivate those relationships, they might take time to develop and establish. But when you have them, this is when you can it really compounds in what it delivers for your advancements. All of that, though, relies on the other part, which is yourself. And this is where I go completely unoriginal, but you have to know your stuff if you want to advance. Like realistically, like to get to technical lead roles or even engineering leadership roles. And yes, I may have some experience bias here because I'm a deeply technical engineering leader. But like being technical remains, in my opinion, one of the almost simplest way as engineers to interview well and to advance in your career, to have more impact. And for that, yeah, you have to know your shit, and you have to know broadly. And the best way to show that isn't going to be through lead code or inverting binary trees in your free time. It's going to be through being able to talk about the work that you've done, the things that you've built, and really their design patterns and system design, the technologies that were used, how it all works, how do those technologies work as well, what trade-offs you've made in those designs, decisions you've made and why, and to have opinions about all of that stuff, right? And it's okay to talk critically maybe of certain systems, certain technologies, certain frameworks, stuff like this. But at least it shows that you've had enough hands-on direct experience with this stuff to experience their rough edges, and to have developed opinions about them. And that's a much higher signal for an engineering leader or hiring manager that's interviewing you. It's when someone can talk in those terms, it's hard to fake that. It's hard to fake that experience, and we can tell as people interviewing. So kind of just being exposed to many different cultures, many different cuisines, or different people. You have to try to expand your horizons and your mindset on the technical work that you do, exposing yourself to different technologies, different languages, different systems, different architectural patterns, and enough so that you can also understand what their pros and cons are, and kind of having that curiosity. So that can really build things with your hands here, up and down the stack. Even if you're a front-end engineer, it's important to know, well, how do you build APIs? How do your front end talks to your back end? How do you deal with authentication, and how does security gets involved? And how can your API be abused, or how are good interaction patterns between your app and the backend, and how does that translate to what's happening to your database? All of those things, right, are really important to know about. I would even say just to be considered a senior engineer, that's kind of mandatory. And then having a lot of experience with different architectures and different technologies, right, to help build systems in better ways, right, where you are, and have that impact, right? And then being able to talk about that in your future interviews. So I guess to summarize this is we can tell when you know your stuff, and we can tell when it's a little shallow, and there's kind of no shortcut for getting there. So
I think that's spot on. I mean, you say, I would say, I don't know who's come to my office hours, or Gems or any of our office hours, but this is literally all we try to talk about all the time. It's getting deep into, right, like being able to not only have built things, but to understand the context of what you've built from a deep impact across all the different parts of the product in the business. Am I summarizing that somewhat correctly? I had a follow-up
yeah,
ish.
across the business is also really important, right? Ideally you find projects you work on that have significant business impact, that are high leverage for your team or for the company. But even just on a technical standpoint, right?
So I have a follow-up question for you on that, because we get I mean, this is a huge reason folks get rejected during the interview is
Yeah.
the story they pick isn't technical enough, or the project they pick doesn't come across technically enough. Do you have any advice? Does that sound when that comes up for you, do you feel like, and I know it's a really complicated thing to answer broadly across everybody's situation, but do any tips come to mind to not fall into that trap?
Um,
Obviously, if you have the experience, but sometimes people don't
yeah.
articulate the experience, yeah, you get me.
Um, I think like trying to convey through like your experience and your opinion about the decisions and your understanding of like how they were made, or if you made them or participated in how they were made, talking about the trade-offs, the pros and cons, how it played out, right? Like, what have you learned from this, right? Like, if you say like, oh, well, we decided to use Kafka because that's what we're already in use, or it seemed okay. It's like, okay, well, that's actually not necessarily always a bad choice, right? But like, once it was in production, like, did it all work out? Was it all rosy? Like, I bet not, because it's Kafka after all, right? And those are the little types of nuggets, right? That are going to show that you you put attention, right? There's a question here: how to handle talking about a project that failed? That's also a really those make great examples,
I
right?
agree.
Especially if you can again communicate about the the why and the learnings, right, from that.
I would rather hire
I've
someone who
certainly
failed and learned from
involved
it than
in,
someone who didn't
yeah,
fail.
I've been
Exactly.
involved in plenty of projects that, I would say were maybe successful in their execution, but didn't actually deliver what we wanted to at the end, right? Or maybe because along the way, um, a bunch of technical constraints or limitations led to not being able to realize really the full vision of the feature we wanted to build, and it kind of didn't really deliver on our expectations. And yeah, there's plenty of reasons for this, but like it's being able to um, talk about those, or like what decisions were made, or maybe what limitations came into the picture, and how do we try to solve them, or maybe could we not overcome some of them, and why? How could we do this differently? Uh, those are
Yeah,
really also interesting things.
love it. I think I would rather somebody tell a story about a failure and what they learned than a project that's boring or not complex. Do
Yeah,
you too? Yeah, any day. Yeah, okay.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
And if
Love
I
it.
can piggyback, let's say one thing too, Lexi, is if you feel like you're not getting the right story, I would encourage you to lead the interviewer. Not everybody has interview skills. Let's just be honest. Sometimes companies don't even train people before they get thrown on interviews. And so your interviewer may actually be the problem sometimes, but there are ways to reverse that and work it in your favor. And so one of the things I learned from someone I do all the time is if I pick a story and I'm not sure it's the right story, I'll literally lead with, I'm going to pick a story that goes over more of the technical trade-offs and not necessarily the deep technical knowledge, but let me know if you prefer to hear more of in depth. And when I wrap, I'll say, I didn't touch really deeply, but I can. Let me know if you'd like me to do that. So I always lead the interviewer in case they're not getting what they need because I'm like,
Yeah.
it's your job to also tell me what you need from me. And sometimes they forget that.
Really good point. Love it. Oh, we're running close on time. I want to get into our last question and then we'll get into some of these questions in the chat. Okay. Hot take. It can be, I know, like Heather, I think we're kind of broadening it into engineering rather than just software engineering, but it can be about interviews, career growth, anything. Hot takes. Let's go. Who wants to go first? Max, you want to go first?
Sure. The hot take that I had kind of written down was, in software, we're actually terrible at engineering. Like, if you consider engineering as a field and all the possible kinds of engineers, software engineers are quite possibly the worst possible kind of engineers. Like, the overwhelming majority of software is bad, overly complex, underperforms, breaks all the time, causes outages, billions of dollars in lost revenue or opportunity or damages. And if you compare that to, I don't know, civil engineering or mechanical engineering, things like this, like domains where like if something goes wrong, people might actually die. Like, software is we're pretty bad, right? But I guess that's the price to pay for um, delivering the type of AI advances, for example, that we've seen in the last year, or the gazillion of SaaS apps that add filters to your face for Instagram. But yeah, that was my take on software engineering. Like, if we, yeah, I really, I think it's an interesting thought experiment what the industry would look like if we had to apply the same level of like validation and care as other fields of engineering did. And I guess they do in, the space
Hardware.
industry, or, really hard like automation systems or control systems. But the software part of those is, not a minor part, but it's only it's a smaller part of a much bigger whole, I would say.
Totally. Move fast and break things is,
Yes.
okay. Heather, what do you have?
I love Max went the caliente on the beginning. I love that hot take. So mine's maybe a little less spicy, but I'll call the elephant in the room we skipped over earlier. AI is overhyped and we all know it. So at the short of it, people ask me all the time, is it going to take my job? I staff and hire for vast roles and different types of roles, all of which are impacted by AI. AI is going to make us smarter at our jobs. It's going to make it easier to take the mundane out, right? Write my email for me, schedule that calendar invite for me, find the syntax error for me. It is not going to take your jobs. It's not going to take my job. The reality is that humans bring creativity to the table. AI can't do that, at least not today. Supposedly someday it will. It ain't there yet. And until it can do true creativity, it can't take our jobs. What it is going to do is just challenge us to elevate our skill sets, but that's nothing new for anybody in engineering. Our skill sets become obsolete every 5 years. Nobody started with one coding language 15 years ago and still writing in that same language. We are already used to having to elevate ourselves constantly. That's just the reality of staying relevant. It's even harder once you become a director and you're not pushing buttons anymore and you're still trying to be relevant and learn your skill set and your craft. So AI is going to force us to work on more complex, more creative things, but I think that's a gift. We're going to have more time to invest in the creative side of our work. A lot of people don't realize software development is creative work. That is what we do. We create things from nothing. So you guys are going to have more time to spend on the more important things and a whole lot less debugging on syntax errors. That's how I see copilots. I don't see them as a replacement for anybody's jobs today. Any more than everybody thought secretaries would eventually go away because we have computers now. So why do we need secretaries? No, they're just executive business partners now. They do higher quality, higher complexity work. They absolutely still manage calendars, but they do it in a better way and more efficiently. None of us are going away. AI is just going to take away the mundane work. That's my hot take.
Hot take. Thank you both so much. I have one really quick follow-up, and then I will spend the rest of the time in the questions in the chat and throw any other questions that you have. Also, throw some positive feedback for our amazing panelists in the chat as you think of it over the next 5 minutes, because we all love to know how it went. My question to both of you is, what percentage of your job are you doing new things for the first time? It's like I thought of it as a follow-up to your question, Heather.
Ooh,
Things you've
how
never done
percentage am I
before,
doing? You
learning,
said,
things
what's the percentage of doing new work?
you've never done before. We have an imposter syndrome issue where people go, "Oh, I've never done that job before, so I don't know if I'm qualified for it." And I always tell people literally every single day that a good chunk of my job, I've never done anything like that before. I'm solving new problems all the time.
I literally said this to, as I'm leaving my current job, all my team has been meeting with me one-on-one, and one of my newest employees who's entry-level help desk put time in my calendar. I was so proud that she did that. And she asked me, she goes, when am I going to feel more confident? You're so capable and confident all the time. I said, oh, we're just faking it. And she was like, huh? And I was like, dead serious, every executive faking it. Everybody shows up every day and we fake it. And the ones of us that are vulnerable enough to say that, we're going to go farther because we're okay with that. Every single person is faking it 99% of the time because we're constantly getting through things we've never seen before. That's our job. What I do have confidence is, after 20 years in my field, I've been able to figure it out every single time. So I have confidence I'm going to figure everything else out too. It's confidence that I'll figure it out. So the percentage of my job in a day, on a day-to-day basis, it's pretty much the same work all the time. But every time I switch jobs, I'm taking on entire new skill sets. I'm going to Lyft in 2 weeks and I'm taking on a 90-person department. I've only run to 45. I'm about to double that. Okay. They also said, can you take on AB Eng? And I went, never run AB Eng before, but sure, why not? Let's find out. And they were like, we trust you'll figure it out. Am I a little intimidated? Of course I am. If I wasn't, that'd be a problem. But I'm going to go ask some really good questions. I'm going to admit what I don't know, and I'm going to go figure it out. So yeah, you're going to constantly run into things in your job you've never been on before. Volunteer for projects that sound fun, but you don't have the skills yet. You can learn them just like everyone else can. And have faith, because you know that every challenge you've had before, I guarantee you, you've mastered it and you'll master the next challenge too. because you can think it through and figure it out. So it's faith in your ability to figure it out, not faith that you've done the work before.
Yeah,
Love it. Max, I
I
want to hear
totally
yours.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's like on any given week between 10 and 50% is like is new
Yeah.
stuff. And it's really like based on what Heather just said, you have to shift like your confidence from being in like I know how to do those things to I know how to acquire new skills and to do new things. And you should think about it, even as engineers, all of you are already doing this. Like whenever you take on a new project, by definition, it's like it's something new. Like yes, it's utilizing some skills that you have, but it's always in a new context unless you're like mechanically rebuilding the same component at every company that you go to. But uh, there's going to be some new stuff that's involved, and building confidence around the fact that yes, I can figure this out means that then the world's your oyster about like you can kind of take on anything. And like for me recently, for example, one of the like new things we're looking at is like we have to look for new office space, and we have to figure out like how to actually build out this office space and what do we need in there. And like we're gonna have to set up like networking and like the coffee station and all that stuff. And it's like, what does that have to do with a head of engineering role? Not much, but it doesn't matter, right? And someone has to do it, right? And we'll figure it out, right? And we'll make it work, right? So and that's also part of what makes my role like super fun is there's new stuff that I've never done before all the time.
Totally.
And but at the same time, there's also stuff that I've done before that I have a high degree of like expertise that I can bring to the team, and it's an awesome balance between those two things. So and I really wish that
Awesome.
on anyone because that's that's what's going to give you growth in your career.
This has been so great. Thank you both so much for coming. I know we didn't get to some of the questions. It was my bad to just take our time with that last question, but I had a lot to ask you all. I grabbed these questions. Heather, I tagged you in our community channel if you want to start responding to any of those if you get a minute later today and you want to write some replies. Max, I'll send them to you DM just since you're not in the channels and I can, if you have any answers. It's a little bit more career question stuff than some of the topics we were talking about, so I just figured we'd bring it to the chat. But the last thing I want to do is can everybody, if you can think of one, yeah, say thank you and also write something you learned in the chat and then we'll hop off in a minute. So write your things, something you learned, everyone. It can be our panelists too if you're interested.
And I don't know if we wanted just to address Almira's question since she was the first to actually.
Oh, I know.
Put in
I have them all saved because I think everybody gets a good, but it's totally, this is my favorite part, so let's do it. But I have all the questions saved and I will send them to you after this. Unless you had an immediate thought that you wanted to get into. Oh, that was nice.
I mean, you have to ask those question point blank, I think, right? And like ideally, like the hiring manager interview, or even to the engineers themselves that you're talking to, like what is their day like, right? Like how often does on-call page them? What's the philosophy of like the head of engineering on those things, right? And get answers this way, I would say.
Love it.
I can take one and give you a short answer for it. Is that okay?
Perfect. Yeah, hit it.
I love the one question where someone said about advice for women who want to move into leadership but feel they lack enough experience. That was me at Google. I went to my boss and I was like, hey, I'm kind of frustrated because there's literally 7 people between me and Sundar and not one woman. This is Google. We really can't find one qualified woman engineer, really. And to my sassy response, his answer was, well, what are you going to do about it? And I was like, what? It's not my job to do anything about it. And he said, you've got leadership skills, so go be a leader. I was like, nah, I like writing scripts and coding people and debugging entry logs. There's way easier than dealing with people problems. He goes, and that's the problem. You got to be willing to put yourself out there if you want to fix the problem. So my next response to him was, but I don't have any leadership experience. And he goes, that's not true. How many people have you mentored on this team? How many women in the company have you reached out to and helped just because they were peers? I was like, well, that's not management. He goes, yes, it is. You have way more leadership experience than you think. There is non-authoritative leadership. And if you're not doing non-authoritative leadership, find those opportunities. Find people you can mentor, work on projects with other people, take a tech lead role on a project, ask your boss for those opportunities. Say, is there a junior engineer I can help? Heck, work with somebody on a volunteer project outside of work. There are ways to lead and create leadership opportunities for yourself that are not directly management, and they do translate. And then secondly, when Meta asked me, do you want to come run a department? And I went, I've never even led before. You want me to run a 10-person department? All right, sure, let's see how it goes. So when the opportunity does come, don't be afraid to take it because you don't have enough experience. Again, like I said earlier, trust that you'll figure it out. And if you have a good intent and you admit what you do and you don't know and are willing to learn, there's nothing you can't do, including leadership. So I went to run a 10-person department with 0 leadership under my belt and figured it out and did a really good job. And now I'm running massive departments at big companies. So you're never going to have the leadership experience until you volunteer to get it. And it's going to be non-traditional. And then when you jump to that role, you'll figure it out on the job. Just prioritize their careers over your own. And that's the secret to good leadership.
This is so awesome. Thank you both for volunteering your time. Let's also emoji something, maybe balloon or party. I don't know. I wanted to a clap. Let's emoji a clap. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm grabbing some of the comments before we hop off, but feel free to, and I'll share some of them. And I also had my AI note taker on, and I got some really good summaries of some of the takeaways you shared. So I'll share them with our panelists and also with everybody in chat shortly after this. Really, really good one. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Do the last one here. Good night.
Have a good night. Thanks for having me.